The Sweep Spot is a member of the Mice Chat Podcast Network. MicePod.com. Now, the magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
Lynn, it is going, at least we're going.
We are.
And I am so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to this episode. And I'm so glad that our listeners have joined us.
Yes, it's episode 281.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cool. So, I wanted to mention that Ken and I are both former Disneyland Studio cast members, and we talk about Disneyland. We are also authors of two books, Cleaning the Kingdom, with two separate subtitles. And the first one came out in 2015, and the second one came out just last year. So, not even a year ago, but yeah, it was in 2019. You can get those books on Amazon. The paperback. I still have one or two of the first book here if you want autographed copies of our books. I have plenty of the second book. If you haven't got it yet, we have them. If you want them on Kindle, we have it on audio. For the first book is on audio. We will start working on the second book soon. Still in the works. And also, we have a Patreon where we do a bonus episode once a month. We just released our March one, but you can still get in on it. So if you join at the $5 level, you can get one bonus episode a month. And if you join, this before the next one comes out, I will send you this most recent one with your, to your email. I'll just send it to your email. So thank you to everyone who has been doing that. We really appreciate it, and it helps us out. And they've been a lot of fun to record too. So check that out. You could go to Patreon, search the Sweet Spot, or there's a link on our homepage on our website, thesweetspot.com. Also, we did something different last week. For the first time, we had a live video stream that we did where we were on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search the Sweet Spot and subscribe today. And we're going to do these at least once a month. We may do them twice a month. We'll see what happens. But I believe we're going to try to do the next one next Friday on was that April 4th, I believe? 3rd or 4th. But whatever the Friday is next week. And we're going to do that. But it was a lot of fun. People are able to write in the chat box, and we could see that, and we answered questions, and we just had a fun discussion about some of our favorite restaurants and attractions and just different things that whatever people wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and people, there was that one question, who was going to be our vice presidential running mate? But I said you're in the wrong chat,
and they left. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. It was kind of a challenge to try to get Ken's in Anaheim, and I'm here in Utah, so it's kind of a challenge to get both of our video streams on one. We did a split screen, and you could see our ugly mugs and all that. But it was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. We want to try to keep going. So if you like and you want us to continue to do that, then please try to participate in those live streams. And if you're unable to, the videos are still on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch those later. But please subscribe. It really helps us a lot if you do that. And then I think you can get like a notification or something on there when new videos come out. But anyhow, maybe we'll do more videos, like maybe on my next trip, whenever that will be. Maybe I'll do some videos and add it to that channel too, or maybe Ken will add something to maybe even add one of his Knott's Berry Farm little trips there or something.
Yeah, if they ever reopen. I think we had been planning to do Disneyana in May.
Yeah,
but that's not happening. That's
postponed until October. Yeah, so of course I kind of knew that was going to happen, but they had just told us this past week, so we will not be there for that. But we're going to try to do the October one, and we will give you more information as we get a little closer to that and we find out for sure what's going on. And I think that is it. I want to set up for our main topic tonight. We're going to be talking about the year 1990 and Disneyland, and we're really excited about doing that. And it's just Ken and I, no guest. And I've had some people ask, "What? You couldn't get a guest?" Well, the show was not the show was not started by independent on guests. It started with just Laura and I talking about Disneyland history, and Ken coming around every now and then it's kind of merged into what it is. It just seems like we've had a guest every show, which is great, but it's also nice to, and that's not the goal, is to try to fill up every show with a guest, but it does kind of, we only do recordings twice a month, so to try to fill, all the different contacts and things we have into that, it's really hard. So, but I am excited. Just Ken and I, we're going to talk about Disneyland in 1990. But first up, we're going to have the current events. Now we're going to have the current events. Ken, what is going on?
Nothing, Lynn. Absolutely nothing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Back to you, Lynn. Well, as we record, we're still in the midst of these shutdowns and lockdowns and closures because of COVID-19, a coronavirus.
Yeah.
It's just, we're dealing with unprecedented events. I mean, totally unprecedented events. And if you are, I know you might come to the podcast to escape this kind of thing. So if you need to skip ahead. I won't be offended. My feelings will be hurt. But we've got to talk about it. We can't talk about what's currently happening with Disneyland without talking about it. So Let's get into it. The late breaking news as we record is that Disneyland and Disney World extend coronavirus closures in, quote, until further notice. Now, here's why they're using that wording, until further notice. Because, some clickbait people, some news sources that are totally clickbait, a couple days ago announced Disney parks set to reopen April 1st. And as if Disney had announced that they were going to the reason they did that was because Disney, they did it for clicks.
Right.
But the reason they justify it is because Disney's original closure announcement said, we're going to close to the end of the month.
2 weeks.
End of March, Mm-hmm. So they said, Disneyland set to reopen April 1st. It's like, that's not. So that's why Disney says they're closed until further notice, because they don't want to give a specific date. Because then again, you have that, Disneyland set to reopen April 12th. So,
I thought they said the
Brady,
the 18th or 19th or whatever.
Yeah, well, here's Brady McDonald he's been posting stories still like crazy to the Orange County Register. And here's the late breaking news as of the day we're recording is Disney has extended the temporary closures of its U.S. theme parks indefinitely amid the coronavirus outbreak that has forced theme parks throughout California and across the country to shutter operations. The temporary closures at Disneyland, Disney California Adventure, and the 4 Disney World theme parks have been extended, quote, until further notice due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Disney officials said. Disneyland's Anaheim theme parks closed on March 14th and initially planned to remain closed through the end of the month. Disneyland's 3 hotels and the downtown Disney outdoor shopping mall closed on March 17th. And just in case, you don't know, for the California, the governor of California has been doing daily press conferences, and they've been announcing more and more restrictions on public gatherings. City of LA has probably been the most restrictive, but Orange County and Anaheim have kind of followed in those footsteps, saying, you can't, you really shouldn't even be going to somebody else's house, is what they say. You should only be leaving your house to maybe go hiking or walking or to essential services. So, of course, you can't have theme parks open or downtown Disney because people get close together. They're trying to keep people physically apart from each other. But anyway, the Walt Disney Company has been paying its cast members since the closure of the parks. And in light of this ongoing, increasingly complex crisis, we have made the decision to extend paying hourly parks and resorts cast members through April 18th, Disney said in a statement posted to Twitter. Okay, so they're paying the hourly cast members through April 18th. That doesn't mean, they're going to stop after that. But I don't want to be...
Yeah.
I don't want to be a downer. I don't want to be a pessimist. I don't want to be harsh. Because this is, there's a lot of people who are suffering right now. A lot. Now, if you're still getting paid and you're not having to go to work, well, that's great for you, right? I mean, that's good. But we've got to be realistic here, okay? Jobs exist because somebody needs something done, and they're willing to pay someone else to do it. Either because they just don't want to do it themselves or because they don't have the expertise or whatever. That's why jobs exist. Disney doesn't hire cast members just to have people, just to take care of people. They hire cast members to run their parks because that's how they operate and get money. Now, Disney's not getting money. Now, you can bet Disney's still got expenses. There's still expenses to having the parks there. Disney's not they're not bringing in, money. They're losing a lot of money. You cannot operate a business that way for too long. You can't. Now, it's great they've been paying cast members. I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to do it, though. If I were a cast member, I would seriously be looking for another way to earn income. Now, I know it's very hard because who's hiring right now? Now, granted, there are some people hiring, some grocery stores, Amazon delivery companies, whatever. They're hiring, but I mean, it's tough. It's really, really tough. And I know a lot of cast members live paycheck to paycheck. Those who have over the years managed to build up an emergency fund for themselves, that's great. That's wonderful. That is an exceptional thing to do. And this is exactly why you do that, because I can't imagine they're going to be able to keep doing this if the parks are closed. And I don't mean to be a pessimist, and even when the parks reopen, though, okay. Listen to this. It's a line in the story. Disneyland attendance reached 18.7 million visitors in 2018, according to the Themed Entertainment Association. Disney California Adventure attracted 9.9 million visitors in 2018.
Wow.
Okay, imagine how low attendance is going to be for this year because you've got weeks and weeks and probably months of it not being open. That is a huge deal. But here's the thing: a lot of the people, while there are people who are getting paid right now, and some of them are working, and some of them are being told to stay home from work. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who are not making money right now. Their jobs evaporated with closures of all of this stuff. Restaurants closed. Any quote unquote non-essential business in California has to be pretty much closed. These people are not going to have the money to go on their vacations to Disney. They're not going to have. They're not, or they're going to have to cut back on how big their vacation is. So I'm expecting attendance to suffer once the parks are reopened. Yeah, you'll get a bunch of local annual pass holders who will flood in and go, "Yay, it's back open again." But I don't know. You need to brace for times to be lean going forward. Yeah. Because and if you think there's not going to be cut back, if you think Disney's not going to cancel a bunch of projects, not just the theme parks, but throughout the company, there's going to be a lot of projects that are going to be cut because of this. So that's sad, but that's just the reality. Now, I'm not saying please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that these shutdowns shouldn't have happened or that they shouldn't be extended. I'm just saying that that's the reality of these shutdowns. It is there's a cost to doing these things, and maybe the cost is worth it. The cost is, you're talking about protecting people's health, but it's going to have impacts, and we're probably going to be talking about it for years to come. Unfortunately. Yeah. So there's going to be projects that are planned that are going to be put off or canceled. And it's sad. We'll have to see eventually what happens, though. It's a scary time for a lot of people, and I don't know what Maybe Disney will have to offer special promotions when they come back. There's going to be a few people who are going to be aside from the financial reason. There's going to be a few people who are this experience is going to leave them fearful of crowds. They're not going to, because what happens when there's the next virus, before we find out that it's spreading, so there's going to be people who are going to be reluctant to go because of that. But if there's people who's still going to have disposable income, but maybe not as much, maybe Disney's going to have to offer some specials and say, come on in, for limited time, we're offering this special. We'll have to see. Briefly, I just wanted to mention, LA Times had a column from Todd Martins, "Coronavirus Fallout, Why Closing Disneyland is Such a Blow to American Optimism." And as he says, for whatever was happening in America, and regardless of the corporate directives of the Walt Disney Company, the pirates, the ghosts, and the island birds still saying, it's taken for granted that Disneyland stays open, like a high-priced roadside attraction that stands as a symbol of the stability and seemingly everlasting appeal of American pop art. Throughout its 6 decades, Disneyland has taken the pulse of American culture, be it the romance of Main Street, USA, and New Orleans Square, or the Western action of Frontierland and the intergalactic hopefulness of Space Mountain. So he's just talking about, through all these things. You had, the Kennedy assassination, 9/11. Those were unplanned closures of the park. And you had a few weather-related closures over the years. But other than that, you did have those years where the off-season, they would be closed Monday, Tuesdays. Maybe there was a weather-related closure that would close it on a Wednesday or a Sunday. Other than that, Disneyland has never been closed 3 days in a row. You had the planned closure for the 50th anniversary.
For the media day.
Yeah, they had the one day, but 3 days in a row to have Disneyland closed, for an unplanned. It's never been Disneyland's never had 3 days in a row for unplanned closure, and now you're facing weeks and weeks and weeks. So yeah, I appreciated that column. There was another article that said, they did a couple of articles as, like the last day, because they knew the closure was coming. So they went down to interview people who were coming into the parks that day. The LA Times had an article called "Fans Escape Reality at Disneyland Before It Closes. For service workers, uncertainty abounds." And so they talk about people, visiting the park that day, get a lot of quotes from the guests. And then there was a similar article in the Orange County Register that covered that. Final day at Disneyland before coronavirus shutdown. Quote, "It's the last hurrah," end quote. So, interesting, and at first construction kept going. They were still constructing stuff, and it was easier, but the park's closed. But then they decided, well, you can't very well continue these construction projects if you're possibly exposing the workers to spreading this disease.
Right.
So, and there was an article going back in time. They had a separate article for Disney closes downtown Disney amid coronavirus outbreak, because at first they were going to keep parts of downtown Disney open. Disneyland extends annual pass expiration dates during coronavirus closure. So think about that. There's people making monthly payments on annual passes, and they can't use them right now. Or if someone did pay in bulk up front, But the article points out that Disneyland will extend the expiration dates for pass holders who have annual passes that are valid during the coronavirus closure period. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. There was an article a couple days ago. Disneyland and Disney World coronavirus closures could stretch until May, analysts warn, and that's from the J.P. Morgan analysts. So they're kind of warning because the stock market took a hit. If you've got extra money right now, Disney stock might be a good purchase because it's low. Like a lot of other shares. Yeah,
it was pretty low the other day, but it seems to be back up a little bit. So.
Yeah. Disney and Disney California Adventure halt construction during coronavirus closure, as I was pointing out. Disney has halted construction on the Adventures Campus themed land at Disney California Adventure and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway Dark Ride at Disneyland during the coronavirus closures at the Anaheim theme parks. In line with direction from the government and health officials, the temporary closure of Disneyland Resort includes construction sites. Wow. So that's going to delay stuff. Think about that. So that's, oh my gosh. Disneyland coronavirus closure could cost SoCal economy $400 million. We always talk about when Disneyland is talking about expanding, or when they're talking about some sort of deal with the city of Anaheim, they point out, look, this is how much money we generate for the area.
Wow.
And if Harbor Boulevard is a ghost town right now. All those hotels and shops and restaurants. Think about that.
Depending on Disney to be there, and they're not. Down to the small, like you said, the little shops, restaurants. It's not just Disney. It's a convention center. Convention center.
Anaheim Stadium.
Yeah, there's no base.
And the Honda. The Honda
no
Center.
Events at all. So there's no reason for those hotels to really be open, right?
Think about how Anaheim has benefited tremendously from those 4 venues, and none of them are open. So,
maybe this will kind of show city of Anaheim, which had kind of given Disney in the past a little rough time. Kind of like, look, this is what you'd be like without us.
Yeah.
So.
So there was another article. Disney's coronavirus closures could cost $500 million in lost admission revenue. So, of course, these figures depend on how long the closures go on.
Right.
Obviously, the longer the closures, the more. Let's see. There is another article called Disney Hotel Sorry, I've still got this lingering cough. Disney Hotel coronavirus closure could cost company $140 million worldwide. I think that's optimistic. Because Disney, it's a lucrative business. Okay, very lucrative if you can operate.
Yeah.
Of course, there have been some rainy days. Knott's, for example, won't. If it's raining, Knott's will close. It won't even open if it looks like a rainy day. So it's kind of like, okay, well, we wouldn't have been open anyway.
Right.
Here's another article. Disney faces $3.4 billion coronavirus 1-2 punch at U.S. theme parks, analysts warn. A report from research firm MoffettNathanson paints a grim picture of the financial impact of shuttering Disney theme parks in Anaheim, Florida, and around the world amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So, finally, some better news. Disneyland paying employees $59 million during the coronavirus closures, study shows. Obviously, the longer it goes on and the more they pay employees, the higher that figure goes. Oh, by the way, we will have links to all these articles. So if you want to read them in depth, you can go to thesweepspot.com, check in the current events show notes, and then you will you'll be able to do that.
You know what I need, Ken? I need some good news.
Yeah.
Something to end this on a positive note.
Well, hold on. We've still got a couple
Some more
stories.
downers? Okay. No, just kidding.
Well, hold on. Disney furlough of theme park employees in April could save $500 million, analysts say. An analyst report from J.P. Morgan estimates that furloughing some employees in April could amount to $500 million in cost savings. Well, we hope that doesn't happen. We hope for our friends that doesn't happen. Disney warns coronavirus outbreak could change consumer behavior at theme parks and other businesses.
Yeah.
So, Disney warned investors that changes in consumer behavior as a result of the coronavirus crisis could adversely impact the company's theme parks, cruise lines, theater shows, and movie making and distribution efforts. So they're saying, look, things are going to change even if you reopen. There's a here's something that's not a downer. Okay. Are more virtual queues in Disneyland's post-coronavirus future? So they point out a new virtual queues section has been added to the Disneyland app, while the Anaheim theme park remains shuttered. So, what do you think? Are there going to be more virtual queues? It sounds like it.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think that they tried that with Rise of Resistance and was mostly successful. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I think that with some of the attractions, like, say, if they added it for Space Mountain, I don't think they would quite, get taken up, in the first minute of the park opening. But, I think it could be a good thing for the, merchandise and food. I mean, you're not standing in lines. It's sort of like Fast Pass on steroids, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're definitely going to use technology. One of the things I thought they could do during this closure is I think it'd be funny if when you open the app, if they had cats running around, like the Disneyland cats, because they got free reign of the park without people there.
Yeah, that's true. They're gonna get so used to. They're probably going, "Hey, where's the popcorn and the French fries and stuff?" But
yeah, that's true.
Where'd everyone go?
But yeah. What did we do? Is this they just pick up and relocate? So MiceChat.com, of course, has been keeping updated on everything. They have important Disneyland and Walt Disney World pass holder closure updates, so you can read that. They had a couple of updates, Disneyland news update. The unthinkable happens. They say a week ago we were enjoying Food and Wine Festival and then obsessing over how long it was taking to build a new set of stairs in Tomorrowland. Then a rapid set of events transpired, which resulted in the Disneyland Resort making a sudden decision to close. Yeah. So let's see. They have a Disneyland Resort update part 2. They show you some of the stuff that was going on just before the closures, and they talk about what happened in the initial days of the closures. And they also have Disneyland app refresh hints at theme park future, like we were just talking about. So a brand new update to the Disneyland app just was released on the mobile devices. The official note states, with this release, we fixed bugs and improved overall app performance. While we're sure some bugs were squashed, there was some major features quietly added that hint at a new style of operation for our beloved park. And of course, they talk about virtual queues. They had a Disneyland Resort update part 3. They say that for a week when the parks are closed, there sure has been a lot for us to share with you. Disneyland Resort update focuses on the final days in Disney's California Adventure in Downtown Disney. A massive new land is now on the rocks. There are signs of a new reality for theme parks, and that Disney is already contemplating, and there's a lot of merchandise stuck on shelves until who knows when. They have another update called The Painful Afterglow that's from Dusty Sage. Disneyland news, possible Food and Wine extension, Haunted Mansion enhancement, and more. Let's see. And then finally, they have breaking news, Disneyland closure extended. That was based on the news that just came out. When Disneyland had first announced its closure due to the global health crisis, they were first in the industry to do so and set the standard by which other entertainment providers would follow. Their closures through March 31st was the date emulated up by almost everyone in the industry. However, as conditions throughout the world continue to change, including stay-at-home orders in California and Orlando, it was curious that Disney waited so long to confirm closure extensions. Yeah, there were people who were kind of like, come on now, and then Disney finally announced it. But you know what? There's going to be a time when it's going to reopen. The cruises are going to resume. Disney theme parks around the world will all be open again. Who knows? Disney may end up owning more theme parks. I mean, SeaWorld, for example. But, check with our friends. Keep them in mind, concierge.com. CONCIEARS.com. They will keep updated, and they'll keep you updated. If you want to book a trip, there's probably reservations you can make, later in the year, next year, whatever. You want to get a Disney getaway vacation, and if you can, if you can take a break, you're gonna want it. Get away to Disney's Aulani in Hawaii, or get to Walt Disney World. Go on Adventures by Disney. Contact concierge.com. CONCIEARS.com. Tell them that the Sweep Spot sent you. And when you book with them, you'll get a special gift. They're going to appreciate the business, and you know that there's going to be a new day, and the show will go on. So check with concierge.com. Please, they are the place to go to for planned Disney trips.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Ken. We're going to get to our main topic, and I'm really looking forward to discussing that.
Welcome to the celebration. It's a jubilation. It's a party crowd. People in the streets are dancing. No time for romancing. It's party crowd. Washington.
Okay, on our main topic tonight, we're going to talk about a specific year like we usually do this year, because we're in the year 2020, ending with the zero. This year we're talking about the years 1960, 70, 80, and 90 is the year we are going to talk about tonight.
All right.
Ken, wasn't that the year that you started at Disneyland?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, it was. According to my my long criminal record.
Right.
Yeah, 1990 was the year that I started as a cast member, but I was only seasonal at first, so they don't count it for seniority purposes. But yeah.
Cool.
So that was. So I have a lot to say about 1990.
Yeah. We usually have a lot to say, but no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 1990 was the year they celebrated the 35 years, right?
That's right, the 35th anniversary, and every 5 years Disney was making a huge deal of their anniversary. Mm-hmm. You know, like I can't believe we've lasted five more years. You know, it was almost like a political thing. You know, 5 more years, 5 more years. But yeah, it was a big promotion.
Right.
And really, they were kind of turning a corner, because Michael Eisner and Frank Wells, you know, they came in 1984 to run the whole corporation, and then they, you know, so you're talking a little over 5 years. They've had time to put their plans into place, right? So they added a lot to Walt Disney World. You know, a lot of stuff opened up at Walt Disney World in 1989. And then at Disneyland had gotten Splash Mountain in 1989. And so then you hit 1990 and it's like, well, what's next? And they started talking about the future of the resort. Mm-hmm. I guess we can get more into that later, but
yeah, whatever.
I mean, what does the resort look like at this point?
So, 1990, we obviously the main entrance was off of Harbor Boulevard. You had the marquee there.
Yeah.
And the parking lot where California Adventure is now. And cast members back then, I remember when I was working there in 91, so a year later, the parking lot was separate. The cast members were separated by a chain link fence. Wasn't it like 4 feet high or something?
Yeah.
And it was the closest to Harbor. You would enter off of Harbor, off a little entrance there.
Yeah.
But I remember parking way out, and I think it was Mickey was the farthest one out by the entrance there. But
yeah, there was cast member parking right there. Yeah, you'd park right there and then walk to clock in, and yeah, so that was convenient.
And when you hired in, it was 1990, so the casting was right there by Harbor.
Yeah, they had casting there. You could see it from the monorail.
Mm-hmm. Building's still there, but it's
Yeah, it's used for other things. I mean, it was, yeah, that's where the casting was. I remember walking over from the main entrance of the park one day to go in and get my application
oh
and to drop it off again, and then that's where I had my interview and all that. It was, I mean, you're talking, the resort was a lot smaller back then, and of course Harbor Boulevard still looked like the second-rate Las Vegas. All the jumble of signs and everything. But you have Disneyland, you have the parking lot, you've got the Disneyland Hotel which is across a street.
Mm-hmm.
It's a West Drive or whatever it was called.
Yeah, West Street.
West Street. It was actually West Street. Yeah, and of course I don't remember exactly when Disney purchased the what had been known as the Emerald Hotel, and then the Pan Pacific, and then it became
80 something. Yeah.
I don't know if they purchased the Disneyland Hotel in '87, I think, but the Pan Pacific and all that, which is now, of course, Paradise Pier, or the Paradise Pier Hotel, even though there's no more Paradise Pier.
You think they'd call it Pixar Pier and theme it?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they've got other plans for it, but
okay.
Yeah,
remember you could take a tram to the hotel too from the main.
Yeah, there was a it looked kind of like the parking lot tram, but it was smaller, and it was labeled for the hotel, and it would take you across the street.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. or you could just ride, of course, what you can still do, ride the monorail from Tomorrowland.
Right.
I would do that sometimes as a guest. I would just take the monorail over there and hang out there. They had an arcade at one point.
Yeah, I remember that was underwater, right?
Yeah, you had to put on a scuba thing. No, it was, the arcade was dry, but it was located in the water. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, things were quite different then, and actually, I graduated in 1990, so.
Oh, congratulations! It's about time.
Aging myself, yeah. So, so I do remember going to grad night that year in June for that.
Yeah, they. And how much did it cost to get into the park as just an ordinary?
$25.50.
Wow.
Yeah.
We thought that was expensive back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember how much the passes were then. I had one, but I don't remember. But I imagine they were about $89.
No, I mean they were,
or $99.
They were like $100 for a few years. I don't know if the prices had started going up by then, but
yeah.
So it was a lot less expensive to get in there. Now of course, inflation, but still, inflation doesn't account for the price difference. But of course, there's one park back then. Your annual pass now, if you just get the West Coast annual pass, it covers both parks. There's two parks. But yeah, I mean, you Splash Mountain was new. There were plans for more, but what do you want to do? You want to go inside the main entrance? Or?
Yeah, I do want to talk about some of those plans towards the end, because I think I have an idea about a few of the things they were talking about doing. But yeah, let's go in the main entrance, and let's go to Main Street. So not a whole lot different on Main Street. Obviously, some shops changed and some things there, but we're mainly going to touch on the attractions, and we'll touch on a few little things here and there. But
Main Street, I mean, back then you had what's called the red carpet. Mm-hmm. The red, the big squares of red concrete. They had them out at the main entrance, and they had them inside at Disneyland.
Right.
So inside Main Street. So you didn't have these pavers. It didn't look like brick. You had the black top for the street, and the sidewalks were the red carpet. They call it red carpet. The red concrete, the big squares. So outdoor vending was a little bit more sparse back then.
Yeah.
That was a difference. You had the the Walt Disney Story featuring great moments with Mr. Lincoln in the Opera House.
Right.
You had the bank there.
Mm-hmm. The bank.
You know.
Lockers, I believe, were still right there on where the Emporium. I believe they were still there. Or if they weren't, they were just in that middle of that transition around that time. But also, Plaza Gardens was there.
Oh yes, down there by the castle.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you had Plaza Gardens. It was Carnation Plaza Gardens, red and white, with the dance floor and the stage, and they could have chairs set up during the day so they could do little shows there. And of course, Carnation Plaza Gardens, which had ice cream and milkshakes and hamburgers.
Oh, yeah. I missed that.
They had Fantasia ice cream there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The custodial office was right behind Plaza Gardens also.
Yes, it was. So what we would do is we would check in, we'd clock in, and costuming and all that was inside the berm, kind of just south of Space Mountain, between Space Mountain and Main Street. And we would, we had lockers, we would change, we would go, we did not take our costumes home back then.
No.
You would get fired for that. So you had your costumes were on property there at all times, and then you had lockers, and you would change out of your regular clothes into your costume.
Mm-hmm.
And then in custodial, we ended up walking over across the plaza to the door there at Carnation Plaza Gardens, get back there, go past a little sign that says Carnotation. There was an engraved sign that was misspelled. It said Carnotation instead of Carnation. What in Carnotation is that? And then we would go into the office, which the office from the outside looked like a mobile home kind of temporary trailer sort of thing. And then you went inside there, and that's where you dropped off your time card, and if it was a physical time card that you dropped off, it was kept over at Harbor House, which is over there by the monorail. And that's where we'd go, and then we would get dispatched there for our day, and we'll go off to our areas. So Custodial Central was back there. So the ways you got to it were either by Carnation. There was the door by the shooting gallery.
Yeah, I remember that.
Fantasyland Gate was another way, but of course, if you're starting your day, you're not going that way. And also at Casa Mexicana, right next to Thunder Mountain, there was the old Mineral Hall facade. Mm-hmm. It used to be something you can enter, and there's a door there. And if you open that door, you have this themed facade for Mineral Hall. And then you open this door, and all of a sudden there's like a modern office behind the door. Yeah. And that was the back of our office.
The conference room was like right there, right?
Yeah. You would come in, and the conference room was on your right. Schedulers were there on your left. It was. We had our schedulers were right there in our office. They weren't. Yeah. You didn't have this centralized scheduling where the cast members have that now. Of course, now so much of it's online.
True. Yeah.
But yeah, this was. I mean, it was a different. You had. This is long before the resort expansion, so it's a totally different situation going on there. But guess who's in charge of? Sure, you have different corporate management, right? But guess who's in charge of the resort?
Who?
Well, Jack Lindquist. You have like Dick Nunes is in charge of Disneyland and Walt Disney World, but you have Jack Lindquist as president of Disneyland. Now Disneyland didn't have the title of president for. I mean, there's some records that say C.V. Wood was a president when Disneyland opened. Yeah. I don't really know if that was his title, but he got booted quick. Disney got rid of him. Walt Disney did, and then so you didn't have a Disneyland president until 1990 when Jack Lindquist was named, and of course Jack Lindquist had a book out, In Service to the Mouse. Mm-hmm. And you can read about his career. But yeah, so you still had the people running the park were the guys who had been there from the start.
Yeah.
We worked with Walt. They had been there from the beginning. So, this was old school still.
Yeah. So let's go into Adventureland and talk about what we saw then.
There's something in the hub, but we'll get back to that later.
Oh yeah.
No, we'll get back to. We'll talk about all that stuff later.
Okay.
But let's go into Adventureland. Yes.
So we've mentioned this before in past episodes, but when you look straight, you see the restrooms and those were there, but you didn't have that rock work that separates the two restrooms like you do now. But before you get there, you have Tiki Room, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Tahitian Terrace was actually there then.
Yeah, the Tahitian Terrace, which was there. That's where tropical. What do they call it? Tropical Hideaway now.
Right.
But before that, it was Aladdin's Oasis, and before that, for a long time, it was Tahitian Terrace, which was that was one of the restaurants. If you said, "Okay, I want a special dining experience at Disneyland," then that was one of the restaurants you would refer people to because it was table service. They did a show, a hula show.
Was it reservations? Do you know how they worked that?
Yes. You physically went there and made reservations.
Oh, okay. Like you did Blue Bayou back then.
You might have. You could have. There was maybe
phone?
a place. I don't know if you could do it by phone, but you might have been able to do it like at City Hall or somewhere else. But mostly you would just physically go there to make reservations.
Right. And
you wanted to do that like first thing because it could book out for the day.
Right.
Okay,
so you have Tahitian Terrace, Jungle Cruise, of course.
Yes, and by the way, Tomorrowland's looking very different than it does now.
Yeah.
I mean, same. You have Jungle Cruise, of course, but
you mean Adventureland?
What did I say?
Tomorrowland. I was thinking, we're going there right now.
Yeah, let's jump across the. Okay. Yeah, why did I do that? Okay. Yeah, Adventureland is looking mighty different. The whole place was knee deep in warm primeval seas. No, just kidding. It was. You had this smooth green slurry ground, right? You didn't have this themed stamped concrete.
Yeah.
And you had the Jungle Cruise, which the interest of the Jungle Cruise was just this simple. It looked like bamboo poles holding up a flat thatched roof. I mean, it looked like it could be taken down overnight. It was just. It was weird because if you go back and look at older pictures, they had a boathouse back in the early days of the Jungle Cruise. Then they got rid of it. And then later in the, like 1994, they're getting ready for Indy. They built what you see there now.
Wasn't it just switchbacks, like under a covered area?
It's just switchbacks under these dried out palm frond thatched cover.
Yeah.
And that was it. And the boats were, you can see the old pictures of them where they're white with colored stripes for the, and they still would use the boats had a cover, like, because for years and years, the jungle had to grow up. So they wanted you looking out. They didn't want you looking up. So the boats look different, and they would direct your vision out and not up. But eventually they would, the jungle was so thick they could, allow you to look up, and it wouldn't ruin the illusion. So you had the jungle there. They had the jungle. They had the bride auction. You'd go by the natives, and they were auctioning off a bride. No, maybe. No, I think I'm confusing something there. They still had some of the shooting. They still had some of the shooting arcade stuff in Adventureland. They still had a couple of
I think so.
Coin operated things where you could do a shooting. That's it's reminiscent of a past attraction. But yeah. So anyway,
so they had
and,
the Swiss Family Treehouse also.
With the Swiska polka.
Right.
The Indiana Jones temple had not been discovered yet.
And it was a little bit longer, right? Because they had to cut some of it out to make room for Indy back then.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, yeah, Adventureland, quite different then.
Sunkissed, I presume, I believe, or maybe it switched over.
I didn't look that up for this.
But yes, you would go out and then you would, so that's Adventureland, and then you hit
New Orleans. Now, Pirates, in 1990, I don't think they had yet started the transformation of that area, had they?
The Pirates entrance was transformed.
It was by 1990.
Yeah, the Pirates entrance was done for I'm sorry for clearing my throat, but Pirates entrance was done in 1987.
Oh, that's right.
When they opened, that's when they opened the gallery. So the gallery the Disney Gallery is there above Pirates of the Caribbean. Walt's the apartment they had built for him that he never got to use, and it had been used as offices. And then in 1987, it opened up as the Disney Gallery, which quickly became my favorite shop in the entire park.
Really? And never heard that before.
Never. Yes, I'd never mentioned that before. You can go up there and hang out, and it was great.
It was great, yeah.
And Pirates of the Caribbean's there, and Pirates of the Caribbean had the boats. I think they've changed the boats. Yeah, they've definitely changed the boats.
Oh, yeah,
since then.
yeah.
But yeah, it was. You still had the side queue of pirates that went between the treehouse.
Oh,
and
that's right.
And it went back. It went back and back.
Way farther, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of. They had switchbacks back there, and they took out a lot of that when they discovered the Indiana Jones temple. But the rest of New Orleans Square hasn't been touched for Fantasmic.
Yeah. Because
Fantasmic is still a couple years away from debuting. So the landscaping and walkways, it looks different. It's
a little more wide open, right?
Yeah. Well, there's more landscaping.
Right.
But I mean, don't have this terracing.
Yeah, not the different leveled.
Correct.
But I wanted to mention Pirates was a slightly different attraction. As there's two scenes that I could think of specifically. I think there was probably more of the changes, but at 1990, right? With the of course, the redhead.
Well, they didn't have Johnny Depp.
They didn't have Johnny Depp. The redhead scene was different then, as we know.
Yeah.
We've talked about. Then there was the scene where they're chasing the women. Right?
Yeah, they were chasing they were not chasing after food.
Right. So that was still original to that. So it was a little different attraction, but
and they did have that scene with the natives dancing.
Yeah.
No, wait. I'm sorry. I'm getting them confused again. Never
okay. Mind. So yeah, New Orleans Square.
One of a kind shop.
Right.
Yeah.
We have Haunted Mansion, of course.
Yes. And that there's no Nightmare Before Christmas yet.
No Fast Pass.
No Fast. Yeah, that's another thing. No Fast Pass anywhere in the park.
No.
Yeah. You didn't have smartphones. People had to sit there in the line staring at
each other.
Staring at each other, staring at the park around them. It was. Can you imagine? Anyway.
Man. Yeah. And then we have one of the newest lands at Disneyland in 1990 is Critter Country.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Renamed. Yeah.
Well, it had been Bear Country, and it got rethemed into Critter Country. Mm-hmm. Other than Splash Mountain, Critter Country didn't have huge changes. It had, I mean, Splash Mountain replaced some restrooms, and then they put restrooms underneath the Hungry Bear restaurant. But they did theme it up to critter. They put little critter houses around the area. You still had they had renamed the Mile Long Bar into the Brer Bar, but it was still like they still had the mirrors in there. So you'd go in there and then like you could get this infinity effect like you would with the Mile Long Bar. You know, you had the canoes down there, and you had the Country Bear Playhouse, right?
Yes, we did, of course. One of my favorites. And we had the canoes were right there, of course,
Yes.
next to the Hungry Bear restaurant. And we had no trail to go to Galaxy's Edge because there was no Galaxy's Edge.
No, if you were eating at that restaurant, you were right up against the river.
Yeah, wasn't that something we noticed when we were there? Not crazy, it was just last month. Seemed like it was last year. But that was something I noticed was that when you're eating, you're just looking down at a walkway now, and the water used to be right up to the restaurant, which was kind of a neat thing to see. But yeah, quite different. So let's move over towards Frontierland, which is
So when we come back there, they redid Fowler's Harbor, and they put Harbor House, that little eatery there. They did that because of Splash Mountain, and it's got like, you know, I love that menu back then.
Yeah, I do too.
So it had Cajun popcorn shrimp, they had catfish nuggets, they had clam chowder in a bread bowl.
Tuna sandwiches with curly fries.
And it was great because it was really a plus. You could sit there. They had a few tables, and you could sit there. And if the Columbia was docked, not operating, you were sitting there right by the Columbia. Of course, the lines for Splash Mountain was huge, so that was going by. But it was, I like that. And then you go just a short ways down, and there's the keel boats that operated seasonally.
Yep.
They're the keel boats right there.
Keel boats right there. Right next to the Tom Sawyer Island rafts, where you take off to go to the island.
Yes.
The island still had the fort.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead and talk about the island.
Well, the island still had the fort there.
Yeah.
Well, the fort's there, but you could walk into the fort. You can walk up in the fort on the walkways. There's little guns that looked out over, little fake guns. And, yeah, it was just more interactive stuff, it seemed like.
You had this mill there at the tip of the island facing New Orleans Square.
Still there.
That you could actually walk through the mill.
I think you can now still.
Well, no, they tore that mill down.
Oh, right, the old one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. So Tom Sawyer Island. I wanted to mention the Golden Horseshoe had a show, but it was called the Golden Horseshoe Jamboree.
Yeah, that was what they did after they ceased the famous and legendary Golden Horseshoe Review.
Yeah.
They did a show called the Golden Horseshoe Jamboree, and so
it wasn't that long. Wasn't that long after? 1990 wasn't that long after it stopped. Didn't it stop in like 86 or 82 or something like that?
86, I believe.
Was it? Yeah. So not very long after, which is hard to believe since it was running since opening day.
And what you've got, you've got, of course, the Mark Twain dock there. You've got Big Thunder Mountain Railroad.
Yeah. Only 11 years old at this time.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. And they also have back along the Big Thunder Trail, they've got the Big Thunder Ranch, which opened up in 1986.
Oh, that's right.
So that's fairly new. And what they have back there, they didn't have the festival arena or anything. They had a barbecue restaurant. They had the goats. You can pet the goats. And then they had horses between where the goats were and the train and the railroad. So you could see horses back there. At one point, they had Mickey Moo, a cow that had a Mickey Mouse shape on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was nice. It was a really quiet corner of the park, you know, quite different from Galaxy's Edge. And it was a nice little stop if you're on your way to Fantasyland, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So then, speaking of Fantasyland, let's walk into there. So Fantasyland had the change in 1983. So you're only 7 years since the change, which you think of something that's been open 7 years since now. I mean, you're thinking of something like Cars Land or something, which is pretty close to right in there that range.
Yeah.
I mean, which to me still seems fairly new. So yeah, these changes were done just before then. You have the Skyway to Tomorrowland. It's still there.
Yep.
We have the Casey Jr. train. Dumbo.
Dumbo was recently changed a lot in terms of the waiting area and everything. But back then, it was a very plain, simple waiting area.
Yeah, and we got to see that. I think last time we were there last month, you were mentioning as we walked by. Oh yeah, there
it is.
Yeah. So Dumbo, and then we have Pinocchio, Snow White's Scary Adventure. We have the Castle Walkthrough, which was similar to now, but it was different type of storytelling. What would you call that?
It kind of reminded me of the windows you would see in the Emporium, because the Emporium would have different scenes in their exterior windows of often the latest animated movie or the latest re-released animated movie, because they used to re-release them in the theaters back then. And
little mechanical things that would move.
They kind of look like dolls, but yeah, it was interesting to see that. It was a nice miniature diorama of the movie.
Yeah. And then we have Peter Pan, Flight, Mr. Toad, the Teacups, Alice in Wonderland, Storybook Canal Boats. So that's the area that I like to call the heart of Fantasyland, like that area, because there's another part of it that we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, so that part section of Fantasyland had some small changes, but it was still fairly new too, as far as its big changes it had in prior years. So then we have, let's go out of a ways here before we work our way back. But we have It's a Small World. Now that area, we had mentioned this before, but that area was more wide open. It wasn't designed for when they built up for Light Magic, they kind of restructured that whole area.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the old school. Yeah, it's big old wide black flat top.
Yeah.
You had a permanent little outdoor vending location. If you were looking at It's a Small World, it was there on the right. It looked like a little train. That was their ice cream, vending stand. And then they also had a souvenir shop there on the right. They didn't have this shop that you see at the exit of Small World now. And they didn't, of course, they did not have Small World Holiday. So it was the regular Small World year round.
And the train station was Videopolis Train Depot or something like that. And then they had Videopolis Theater. It wasn't that was where, and that was still in its prime. I mean, that was only a few years old then?
I think it opened,
85, 86?
Yeah, somewhere around there. And then it was I think, well, I think what was going on at the time was Disney. I think the movie Dick Tracy came out that year.
It did.
So what they had done is at the end of 1989, I think they had a Christmas show at the stage there. But then in 1990, what they did is, okay, we're going to promote Dick Tracy.
Well, I have a little information on that if you want to
Go
know
ahead.
some dates.
Yes.
So we had One Man's Dream ended on April 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. Is they had a show called One Man's Dream. You know.
Mm-hmm. That ended on April 22nd, and then June 15th, so not too long after, Dick Tracy show debuted. Then, but that was during the day, and then at night it was Videopolis.
Yeah, where he had dancing and stuff like that.
Right.
The Dick Tracy thing was Diamond Double Cross. It was a.
Yeah.
I mean, because Batman had come out like in 1989, the original Tim Burton Batman, and it had made so much money that Disney was like, okay, we've got Dick Tracy, we're gonna make a lot of money like Batman did. So they were promoting the heck out of Dick Tracy, and like up until the last minute, they were promoting it as a Walt Disney picture, which they ended up releasing it as a Touchstone picture at the last minute because it was a little bit racy. Yeah. But the Diamond Double Cross show was very good. Disney had it wasn't a lot of the shows Disney did at that stage were using entertainment cast members like you would for the parade, but for the Diamond Double Cross show, they had advertised in Hollywood for like union equity actors. And so these were like, there's a reason why later when they did Pocahontas there, they had Adina Menzel or Adela Dazeem or whatever her name is. Who ended up becoming really famous. So these were like actors who had agents, stuff like that. It was a really good show. And then out in front of it, they had these little backdrops for photo. This is before Instagram.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But it was kind of themed. The whole thing was kind of themed to Dick Tracy, the whole area there. So, and there's no Toontown, right? So this is like the dead end of that part of the park. Toontown. I shouldn't say there's no Toontown. Toontown is not open to non-Toons yet.
Yeah.
So this is the dead end of that end of the park. And so it was.
But 1990, they may have started work on it, or pretty close to starting, right?
Their plans were well underway for it.
Right.
Which that's part of what I'll get into when we talk about.
Yeah, because I know there's some. So then after you kind of head back up the parade route towards towards the Matterhorn, right? You have the Matterhorn bobsleds. But before that, you have the motorboat cruise. And
that's right, the motorboat cruise.
Yeah.
That was an interesting attraction because it was very simple. You climb into these boats. You might sit there. It might be a kid and their parent. You have a steering wheel, which actually doesn't do anything, and you have a pedal, which does. The pedal does rev the motor to make you go faster. If you didn't rev the pedal, then the boat behind you was going to push you.
Yeah.
But it was a nice little ride, a nice, very slow moving line though. The capacity for that attraction was very small. So
probably one of the reasons they got rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But think of the Utopia, but less control over your vehicle. So
they could still bring it back, Ken.
They encroached on its area a little bit when they built the light magic stuff.
Yeah. And then you have Fantasyland Utopia.
Yeah, and really there had been various Utopias over the years. Remember, like Junior and Midget Utopia.
Right.
But by this time, the Fantasyland Utopia and the Tomorrowland Utopia they used the same vehicles. They were identical cars. The tracks
intertwined, right?
Intertwined, but you didn't. It's not like if you started on the Fantasyland Utopia, you'd end up in Tomorrowland. No,
yeah.
But they did intertwine there at the back of their area. So
wasn't it more seasonal too?
Yeah, it was. I'm about to say it was more seasonal. So, like on a really busy day, to get the overflow from the Tomorrowland Utopia, they would use that. So, right there across from the Matterhorn.
Right. Okay, let's move into Tomorrowland because we have a lot of attractions that aren't there anymore. A few there. So the first thing you see is the subs. Now, this was the submarine voyage, not Finding Nemo. So pretty much to the original submarine. And above you have the monorail station,
Yeah.
with the speed ramp to get up there.
They had a speed ramp.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the exit was a speed ramp too, I think. I'm trying to remember. Or was it just the ramp? Was it just that ramp?
I think they just had I think it was just a ramp.
And that was that's the entrance now. The entrance ramp.
Yeah, they reversed those, but
Yeah. And then we have Tomorrowland Utopia, or just Utopia. The train station's over there in the corner. And then you have a big vacant building, and this is fairly recently vacant. Was it 86? 80?
Yeah, it's right next. Yeah. Okay, it's right next to the Skyway station. Skyway to Fantasyland.
Oh yeah, Skyway. Yeah.
But you had what was the Carousel Theater, and most recently it had housed America Sings.
Right.
Before that, it was Carousel Progress, but they shipped that to Florida. So you had America Sings, and then America Sings was closed down in 1988 to ship all the they were going to ship all the animatronics into Splash Mountain. So a couple of them had gone to Star Tours already, but so you had it used to be America Sings, and now it's just the Carousel Theater, never to be occupied by guests again. Upstairs you had offices, and you had a show element for the People Mover, and then downstairs it was still the theaters, where we would actually do trainings in there. They would take us in there to do like safety trainings, like this is how you operate a fire extinguisher, that sort of thing. So it was convenient for that because it's indoors and climate controlled and comfy seats and everything like that.
Yeah. And then right next to that we have Mission to Mars.
Yeah, and that's still opening back then. It's where Pizza Planet is now. And if you saw a picture of it, you would recognize the facade. The facade still has much the same shape.
Oh yeah.
But it was Mission to Mars. It was you would kind of like a forerunner to Star Tours, and it had succeeded Mission to the Moon or Flight to the Moon. And the premise was you are in a rocket spaceship and you are going to the planet Mars. You're going to take a scientific visit to the planet Mars. And that was, like I said, it's a precursor to Star Tours because you had the screens that, were supposed to be like windows, and your seats would shake a little bit.
And not raised, but to give the effect, to give you certain effects.
Yeah.
It would kind of move up a little bit, like the center of the seat would like bubble up, or how?
It's kind of hard to describe it, but
or sink down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the pre-show for that. I always thought it was interesting. They had the animatronic.
Mission Control with Mr. Johnson, and it looked like Mission Control, and it was, they kind of explained what was. They were setting up the show. They were setting up the attraction. So that was
Mission to Mars.
and that was open. It didn't seem to be open all the time. It was open on the busier days.
Yeah. At that point.
And same with what was next to it, which was you had the Space Place restaurant, which remnants of that are still there. Part of it got absorbed into Pizza, what's now Pizza Planet, but it was, instead of the Space Mountain entrance, you had a walk-up window. You had walk-up windows to get it's like burgers and fries, and the fries were like, I don't know how you describe them, Mojo or I don't know, waffle. I don't know if they're waffle, but Anyway, they weren't the string fries, and I liked it, and it was of course it was seasonal.
I think it was one of the places that we usually ate. Between that and Hungry Bear, I think we went to Hungry Bear more often. And then Space Mountain, and Space Mountain had a different entrance. Then we had a speed ramp.
Yay, speed ramp!
Yes. And same attraction, but the queue was a little different. You were able to remember the monitors they had in the queue.
I don't know if they had them at that point.
Did they in 1990?
I thought
they had the pre-show monitors, but I do remember the part where you waited in line. You could see the rockets go by.
That was the big thing, was that you got a preview. You're walking by and you can see into the attraction. While you're waiting.
Dark, but you could see the side of the rockets had like, what do you call that?
It was glow in the dark. The side of the rockets
glow in
the dark
lines and stuff, and you could see them when they'd go by. You could just see like a really quick.
So you were kind of getting a preview of what you were in store for.
Same with another attraction we'll mention later, but so Space Mountain, and then below Space Mountain you had Captain EO.
Yes. That had opened in late '86. So it's a 3D. They brought it back, not a few years ago, not the full show, but this was Okay, Disney was starting all the theme parks that were dealing with 3D movies, but the next step was like making in-theater effects, and this was the first one that Disney did with in-theater effects. So it was a 3D movie, but you also had like a fog machine, and you had lasers, and fiber optic stars, and you can see. I think you can see Captain EO you can see the film for it, I think, on YouTube or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Provided Disney hasn't taken it down, but it was, when it premiered, it was a really big deal. And this is 3-4 years down the line, it's still kind of a big deal. Not as huge as when it first opened, but it was popular. These movies. Theaters weren't relegated to showing previews of the latest, movie. So this was an attraction
for the park, yeah.
Yeah, and this was a big deal. And then, what do you have next to it though? Like if you came out of Space Mountain, if you had just watched Captain EO and you're exiting out of the theater, or you had just ridden Space Mountain, you come out and there's this 2-story video arcade.
Oh yeah, the Starcade.
Yeah, that was fun.
I spent a
lot of time there. Yes.
Yeah, they had the air hockey and pinball machines up top.
Yes.
They had some other games too, but those are the ones I remember the most. But yeah, it was packed. People would go there and spend a lot of time. But this is, the time when there wasn't as many. There were some home video games, but
but your home games were very simple compared to the ones in the arcade.
Yeah,
like the ones if you really wanted, if you were a serious gamer, that meant you did it at the arcade. you know? Because you might have this quote unquote same game at home, but the graphics were, really minimal compared to what you'd get in the arcade.
Yeah. And so let's move over to the middle
Yes.
of Tomorrowland. We have two attractions. We have the People Mover and the Astrojets.
The Rocket Jets.
Rocket Jets. And People Mover, we've mentioned that a lot, and we've done a whole show on it. But that attraction was, well, you can still see the track today. It's
still there.
The loading area is still there.
Well, that was very efficient because you had the loading and unloading for People Mover, which went around in a little circle. You had speed ramps that would take you up there, and then stacked on top of that, you had the rocket jets that you would take an elevator. They had a dual elevator lift that would take you up there to the rocket jets. So the rocket jets, same sort of concept as Astro Orbiter, except it's on top up there, where there's to this day some of the mechanism for the rocket jets is up there. It's just decorated to look like satellites and stuff like that. But you used to rotate and play music, but the rocket jets, I guess a lot of people miss that of being that high up. I mean, it was a spinner. It was a simple spinner ride, but it was themed well, and it was that high up. So that was a big deal.
Yeah.
I never rode that. I did.
No.
I did think I think I took the elevator up one time, but that was enough for me because my fear of high outdoor heights. There was no way, no way I was riding that.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that I did, but I actually did. Because I was similar to you in that sense. I think I'm more afraid of heights now than I was then. Then we have two other attractions to mention. On the left, we have Star Tours.
Yes.
You mentioned.
And that had the original Star Tours. It's not.
Yeah, it was only 4 years old at this time, right? Or 3?
It debuted officially in early January of 1987.
Yeah.
Very, very popular. Very popular. And it was the original. It was a film. They used actual film for the physical film for the screen, and it was just the same. It was going to be the same film each time. They didn't have any of this variation that they do now. And of course, it's based on the original trilogy. So not it's the same film each time, but it was popular. I mean, very popular. It took Splash Mountain being built on the other side to draw some of the crowd away from it. But yeah.
And across from that, we have Circle Vision. And Circle Vision, we mentioned this before, but it was a theater, but it didn't have seating. It had like lean rails.
Lean rails, they called them, because they didn't want you sitting on them.
Yeah. And there was 9 screens, right?
Yes, 9 screens in a circle.
Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed Circle Vision. It just every time I went, I felt like I was going on a little vacation.
Yeah, it was very nice, and again, it was using actual film. Mm-hmm. They had these big bin loop projectors, and the thing about the one at Disneyland is it had in the morning they would show Wonders of China, which I think had been developed for Epcot, the Chinese pavilion. Mm-hmm. That was what they had back in the day. They did not. They had planned it, but they never did build the. It was going to be a really scary attraction called the Wuhan. Never mind. It was something about Wuhan, but never mind. Wonders of China, which is a great film about China, and so Disney, being Disney's like, hey, we can use this over at Disneyland. So they would show it in the mornings And then they would switch over in the afternoons. They would have a film called American Journeys. And before this, they had America the Beautiful or whatever. And the thing is, they had more than one version of America the Beautiful over the years. But America the Beautiful was kind of like a more of a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
They would take you places and say, well, here's the place, and it was factual. But American Journeys was more of a smooth, like slick, almost like a travel log of, hey, don't you want to go take a road trip across the United States of America?
Yeah.
Here's Carlsbad Caverns, and here's it was great. I mean, I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they had two. Sorry to interrupt you, but they had two attractions in the same location. Where other than a live show, where else would they do that? In the mornings it's Wonders of China, in the afternoons it's American Journeys. But it took them a couple of hours to switch the shows over because, like I said, they're using actual film, and they have 9 screens. So they had 9 bin loop projectors where it's like, okay, let's pull this off and put on the American film. Can you imagine if they had forgot to do it for like one of the reels? So you'd have like 8 screens of American Journeys and one. No, but these days the technology would be digital, and they could just, they could alternate back and forth if they wanted to. They could say, okay, at the top of the hour we're going to have American Journeys, and at the bottom of the hour we're going to have Wonders of China. Yeah, the technology is so much better these days. But anyway, it was.
They actually had a department in the park called projectionists.
Yeah,
because they had other things going on, that used that projection technology at the time.
Yeah.
So. Oh yeah, and the pre-show for that had all those flags. I remember those seats. They had like little it's like square.
Yeah, that was. It was a great thing to do on a hot day when the park was busy. You'd go in there, the pre-show. You're inside. You've got these comfy seats to sit on. I don't know what you'd call those kinds of seats. They didn't have backs to them, but
they were like a shared couch, like almost like a huge ottoman.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it was sponsored by Delta back then.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, so it was the pre-show they'd plug Delta and all that stuff, but
yeah, good time.
Yeah, it was great. I thought that was great, and
so I wanted to touch on a few things before we talk about some of the stuff you were wanting to talk about. So they had a parade in 1990, and it was called the Party Gras.
Yes.
Remember that? Yeah.
Party Gras. That was a great parade.
So I'm going to kind of mention a few of these things here that happened. And we had the Pendleton Woolen Mills shop in Frontierland closed April 22nd. But later it opened as American Buffalo Hat Company, the Bonanza Outfitters, and Silver Spur Supply.
Yeah, so that was a big deal because, when Pendleton was a leasee, and
they were there from the beginning, right?
Quite possibly.
I think that Walt was a fan. I think his wife, actually, I'd read somewhere, was a fan of the Pendleton. She wanted that in there. So.
Yeah, Pendleton Woolen Mills. But yeah, that was a big deal because people liked that shop, and then it's like, well, Disney's taking over, Right. There had been, kind of a long march to do that, to take out for the leasees to be replaced by, Disney. So.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of takes us into which you were going to mention, I think.
I wanted to say the Party Gras Parade was probably the first parade Disney had where they would involve the guests. Mm-hmm. They had conga lines. So they would
Yeah.
take, they would take the guests, especially kids, and they would do these conga lines. It was if you can find footage of it online, which I'm sure you can. It was a fun parade. They would have to stop the Skyway from operating though, because they had these inflatable floats, 6 inflatable floats that were so tall they might interfere with the Skyway. So they would stop the Skyway during the parade. Anyway, so it was a fun parade, and it was part of the 35th anniversary celebration for Disneyland.
Right.
So
So I we didn't discuss this part of it, what we were going to talk about, but I wanted to touch on something that I was reading earlier, so I was doing research for this, and they were talking about some of the, and I'll just kind of hint and then you can elaborate, but it was talking about some of the projects that they were thinking about adding.
yeah, they called it Disney Decade. It was a huge deal.
Yeah, and it's from some different properties of at the time. They were talking about a stunt show themed to young Indiana Jones.
Yes.
A Muppet stage show.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. Disney in 1989, Disney had announced a deal to purchase Jim Henson Productions. Okay, the whole company, which would include the Muppets and the Creature Shop and whatever else. Jim Henson was alive, right? So this was an announcement Michael Eisner had made with Jim Henson. The plan was they were gonna really bring the Muppets into Disneyland.
To the West Coast, because they had
a live stage show on the East Coast, right?
They had Hollywood 3D.
Well, they started working on that because of this. They started working on that because of this deal. They started working on the 3D movie because of this deal. And so at Disneyland, the plan was they were gonna put that movie in the one that ended up at California Adventure eventually. They were going to put it in the Opera House. So they were going to remove Disney and Lincoln, which was extremely controversial among Disney fans. Because even though it might be a sparsely attended attraction, every time they talked about taking out Lincoln, Disney fans would go ape, right? How dare you, Waltz?
They would now too. Yeah.
Walt would be churning in his urn. It was So what they wanted to do, they had this whole plan, right? They were gonna turn Mickey Floral, which is at the entrance of Disneyland. They were going to turn that into Kermit Floral. They were going to paint the Matterhorn Kermit green. They were going to paint like Fantasyland buildings Miss Piggy Pink. They were going to have a parade. They were going to have a live stage show back at the Small World Meadows Amphitheater. And like I said, they were going to tear out Walt Disney Story and Great Moments Mr. Lincoln and put Muppet Vision 3D in there. This was very, very controversial, and really at the time, it was like, okay, it didn't fit stylistically. The Muppet characters, I loved them. I loved them growing up, but it didn't really fit with the Disney characters in Disneyland. I thought, okay, I said it's great for the Disney and Jim Studios at Walt Disney World, but it doesn't really fit here. Thankfully, that plan ended. I mean, unfortunately, Jim Henson passed away, and the deal fell apart. And Disney had they ended up having the Muppet Vision movie out of the deal. They did like 3 TV specials at like Disney World and Disneyland that involved the Muppets. And that was about it. And then eventually, of course, years and years later, Disney did buy the Muppets. They didn't buy Jim Henson Productions, but they ended up buying the Muppets years and years later. But that was a whole thing. But you're talking about these announcements. They're part of it was dubbed the Disney Decade. So go down the list of the other things.
Okay, well, so I got all this information out of a great book. It's called the Disneyland Almanac by with Jason Schultz and Kevin Yee. So
Yes.
they're very knowledgeable people in Disneyland. But they were just talking about these different things, and you have they were talking about a permanent Mickey Starland, which we know became Mickey's Toontown. A Little Mermaid dark ride.
Well, yeah. This was the one. If you have the Blu-ray or the whatever DVD or whatever, that was not the one they ended up with. Now it was planned for where Toontown opened up.
Mm-hmm. And then the Alien Encounter, which there was rumors of bringing that to Disneyland to go in the the Mission to Mars area.
Yeah, okay, so they announced a Disney Decade, and like a lot of this stuff ended up getting scrapped right away. So,
yeah, and they there's a lot here. We don't need to go in all the detail, but there was the Toontown trolley. We have, but then they were going to do a Baby Herman's Runaway Baby Buggy ride. A Superstar Television, and the Great Movie Ride were all, rumors of things to come.
Yeah.
And it says, in terms of park expansions, Southern California was to receive a new theme park, either next to Disneyland or in Long Beach, near the new acquisitions to the Disney Empire, the Queen Mary and the Spruce
Right.
House. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that was... They announced stuff both for Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and part of it for Disneyland was they were going to build a Hollywood section between Main Street and Tomorrowland. That area that they keep talking about, but they've never actually done anything there. We know before there were other plans for that, but they were going to have a Hollywood section there. They were going to have, the Brown Derby was probably going to replace the Plaza Inn. And they were going to have the Dick Tracy's Crime Stoppers attraction, which was going to be interactive shoot 'em up. The guests are going to be able to shoot guns. Now, where do we know that from? I mean, you have that now with the Buzz Lightyear attraction and stuff like that.
Right.
And of course, the whole thing about are we going to develop in Long Beach or are we going to do Westcott? I think the original plan was to do both, but they at the time they talked about, well, we don't know which, because they're trying to get the cities to compete, trying to get Long Beach and Anaheim to compete to get the parks. But a lot of these plans change. Like Tomorrowland was going to be the Tomorrowland 2055 concept, originally planned for 1992, and then pushed back. They were going to do it in 1994, and then it ended up happening in 1998. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that ended up in Florida, like Alien Encounter, and they were going to put that new show in the Carousel Theater. It was going to be Plectu's Fantastic Galactic Review, and like an alien music show or something. But a lot of that stuff got announced and then scrapped. But well, I was kind of glad the Muppet stuff got put off. But the whole thing was, Michael Eisner and Frank Wells had gotten their footing, and now they're going to do the major aggressive expansion of Disneyland and Walt Disney World. And so they did this kickoff event in January of 1990 to kick it off, to have the news media there. They brought back the three guys who hosted the opening day show. President Ronald Reagan. Remember his term ended at early '89. His second term ended. So he's there. Bob Cummings and Art Linkletter, and they had a big press event to kick it off. I actually was able to get the media center was set up in the Plaza Inn, and Bruce Gordon, the late Imagineer, he actually got us in. I had my video camera with me, all right, which was a shoulder-mounted thing back then, and he took us in there and got us press kits. So I was very thankful about that. The Party Gras Parade was part of the celebration. They had at the entrance of the park, they had a gift giver thing. Now, they had done a gift thing in 1985, but this was a little different. But it's still at the entrance of the park. It would spit out your ticket. It would say what you won, right? And you might win, popcorn or something like that. But one of the things you could get was you're going to get a chance to spin I call it. I think I'm not sure what it was called, gift giver extraordinaire or something. It was a giant slot machine that was in the middle of the hub where the Walt and Mickey statue is now. In fact, this is one of the reasons they put the Walt and Mickey statue there. So so this was a giant slot machine. You'd go up, you would hand the guy your ticket. There was a guy up there hosting it. You'd pull a lever, and it would have these spinning lights and music, and then where the lights stopped was your prize. Now, the prize could be anything from Mickey plush doll or a couple of VHS tapes were the lower end. And the big grand prize was a new Geo car. Geo was a GM brand. It was a very inexpensive, it's supposed to be like inexpensive and I think fuel efficient. But they had an actual car that was there in the machine. So when the machine would lift up and you would see your car, the thing is, the moment you pull the lever, even though there was all this show after that, when you pull the lever, your prize was already determined. In fact, it would spit out a little ticket to the host who would host. Now, so there were some of us that could figure out what the prize was based on the pattern of the lights. The pattern of the lights would reveal before they stopped what the prize was. And like I said, it was already determined. It was kind of shady in my estimation because the way it was set up was they would only give out the car once per day. So it wasn't true. So if the car had already been issued, there was no way you were going to win a car. So it seemed kind of shady in that respect. Because, you see, well, what are the odds of winning a car? Well, after it's even given away, it's 0. And they when they had the news media demonstration for it, lo and behold, the person won a car. Just imagine that. They just happened at the moment they have a news media demonstration, the guest pulling the lever happened to win a car. And of course, we've talked about it before. Before this, when it was like Blast of the Past, they had a big jukebox there. They had a Ferris wheel there before. They had the Sphere of Death or whatever it was. It was a motorcycle stunt show.
Oh yeah.
So at Imagineering's like, forget this. They got Blaine Gibson to sculpt the partner statue, and the partner statue was installed there, so stuff would never be put there again to block the view of the castle from Main Street. So yeah. So and also, like we said, Party Gras was part of the celebration. The fireworks were pretty standard, but they also had the electrical parade at night, the Main Street Electrical Parade.
Oh yeah. Wow. So yeah.
Quite a year.
Yeah, when I first thought, 1990, that Ken Work started there that year, and I just thought, well, there's a few things to talk about, but I had no idea until I started doing research that this was such a big year. I had to bring back a lot of memories.
And something else I remember, the Party Gras parade ended with confetti.
Oh, yeah.
Lots and lots of confetti. But I think about halfway through the year, they stopped using the confetti to save, because if they did use confetti, not only do they have, to load the confetti and shoot it off and everything, but then the custodial cleanup is a much more extensive operation. So that was a cutback they made. It's like, okay, we're not going to shoot off confetti. But it was the celebration lasted all year. Oh, I wanted to mention briefly, they had the kickoff in early January, but they did do a July 17th event too. And that was mainly the January kickoff mainly happened in Town Square. The July 17th event was at the castle, and I think Art Linkletter was back again. But I know they had some various celebrities there, but it was that was fun.
Wow. Yeah. What a year.
Yeah, if you guys remember, if you guys visited that year, or if you were working at the park, you ought to comment on our Facebook, in the Facebook group for the sweep spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Great. Well, thank you, Ken, for helping us discuss that. And a lot of good memories. And we will be continuing our look at the different years. We still have 1970 and 1980. And I think we'll touch on 2000 also. So we still have a couple more years to discuss this year. And hope you enjoyed that. Okay, well that concludes episode 281.
Wow, I really liked that year, 1990.
Yeah,
it was a really pivotal year, I think, and I was still, that is the year I became a cast member. I became a cast member in June, so I would have been an annual pass holder for a bunch of years, and then became a cast member. So for me, and I was still, I was like 17, so it was a pivotal year for me, and for Disneyland, as we discussed. And so I think about it as happy times, and it's important to think about the happy times right now. One thing I forgot to mention during the show was the Person of the Century poll. That was there at the exit of Circle Vision, and in Walt Disney World they had it at Epcot Center in the Communicore. And this was like a polling machine where you were supposed to be nominating the Person of the Century. And the Disney had an explanation video, and they claimed that they were going to announce who the Person of the Century was on like January 1st, 2000. And the machine was there maybe for a year or two, and then it disappeared. And then Disney never mentioned the Person of the Century again. So that was quite interesting. A lot of people were voting for Walt Disney. And then they took his name off the list because I think they thought that's not fair,
Yeah, it's almost yeah.
And then it disappeared, So the Person of the Century poll. Yeah, I think I think I mentioned that in our first book. I think I kind of explained that, but anyway, so 1990 was a good time, and time of optimism for Disney. And I'm looking forward to doing more episodes about the different years that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Also, you can, like we said, check out our books, Cleaning the Kingdom, our Patreon, for our bonus shows, our YouTube channel now, The Sweep Spot, and leave reviews. Go over to iTunes, wherever you listen to these podcasts, and leave a review. If you've bought our book, leave a review on Amazon. That helps us too. So these are all different ways to help us, and we really appreciate it. And we hope that you're still enjoying the show even when Disneyland is closed. We're trying to talk about some great topics, and we do have some great ones coming up here in the future. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.